time for a little writing again. Last week and the week before, we talked a little bit about what we can write. And so I brought that poster back, that chart back, a chart. What can I write? My opinion, an explanation or information, or a story. And so then we listed some things, and you may have thought of other things over the last few weeks that you can write. And then we talked about, well, if I'm going to write, what am I going to write about? If I'm going to write one of those things, what am I going to write about? And so we made our list of things that we love. Now, I added to my book list. See, that's the beauty of these anchor charts, is you can add to them. And so I added a little to my book list. I thought of other books that I read when I was in elementary school. And so some of these you may not have heard of before. I love the Little House books, and probably you have heard of those, but maybe you haven't heard of Trixie Belden or Donna Parker. Those were mysteries that I enjoyed. And Nancy Drew too, you've probably heard of her. And I also love to read Little Women and Little Men. And so I was thinking about a lesson for today and wanted to include a few extra books for my lesson. So, going back to what can I write, I was thinking that today we might think about writing an opinion. And so I thought, well, what can we express our opinion about that is something that maybe a lot of people might be interested in? And so I was thinking, with books, what about fiction or nonfiction? Is it your opinion that fiction is better to read or nonfiction? And so I started thinking about how I could talk to you about this, and I was noticing my books. So I started looking through some of the books that I brought home from school, and I noticed that I have a whole couple of weeks ago, or I don't know when it was, a few weeks ago. This one is fiction, although it's probably based on a true story, but it is fiction. And I noticed I had a whole lot more fiction than nonfiction, which this one about the Greensboro sit-ins is an informational text. It's written as a story, but it gives information. And so I started noticing that I have a whole lot more, like I said, fiction books than nonfiction. And so I thought, well, I could write my opinion of which is better, fiction or nonfiction. Based on the number of books I have, I would probably say fiction. Now, since it's my opinion, it's not right or wrong, it's just what I think. And so I might, if I were to look at it the other way and say maybe nonfiction is better, I could probably come up with reasons for that too. But for today, I'm going to write about why, for me, fiction is better. So I started thinking about the strategies that we use at my school for writing. And so I brought together two strategies actually in this anchor chart, or this planning page, and I'm going to get out of the way if I can. We use a four-square, which, okay, mathematicians, they aren't squares, and it really bothers me, but it's okay. I guess it would be weird to call it a four rectangle or a four oddly shaped something, polygon. And anyway, there's a rectangle in the middle too. That bothers me, but we're going to let it go. Okay, four squares is what it's called. So we have four squares to plan our writing, and then we have a strategy that we use called wraps. And I'm just going to see if I can get you to see that better up there. The R stands for restate, the A is answer, the E is explain, and then the S we added on for a self-check. And so we start by just restating the question. And our question that we started with was, what's your opinion? Fiction or nonfiction? Which is better? Which is better, fiction or nonfiction? And so I went ahead and wrote part of this on the chart, because I really think it's going to be hard to write on this wall actually, but I went ahead and wrote part of it, And I started by restating my question. So anytime you're starting some kind of writing, it's very, very helpful to restate your question. So start with the R, restate. So I restated my question, and I said, reading fiction is more enjoyable for me to read than nonfiction. Okay, that's my restating and my answer. So if the question is, which is better for you, fiction or nonfiction, then I'm going to start it by saying, I could say my opinion is, but I just said reading fiction, and then I answered it, is more enjoyable for me to read than nonfiction. And then I started thinking about, okay, well, that's my opinion, but I need to tell people why that's my opinion. So that's where the explaining comes in. So I've restated, I've answered, and now I'm going to explain. Well, another book I found really just caught my eye because of the title. Because. This is one of my very favorite words. Using the word because tells people why something is. And so I thought, when I'm telling my opinion, I want to tell people why. And that's part of the explanation. So I wrote the next sentence. After my restating an answer, I wrote, I like fiction because I can get lost in the story. That's one of my reasons that I like fiction. So, restate, answer, explain. I'm giving one reason, and that's, you notice that's a reason because the word because, that's one reason I like to read fiction. Now, if I move over, before I move over, I'm going to talk all about that first in this first block. Then over here, I have another reason. Stories are also more fun because I can feel what the characters feel. So in this block, I can tell all about how I feel what the characters are feeling in a story. I can leave it just with my reason and my answer and one little sentence about explaining, but I really want to give more details there and more elaboration. So that's what I'm going to go back and do in just a minute. I found I thought of another reason. Whoop, I can't find it. There it is. I thought of another reason that I like stories. Stories also make me feel like I'm in the book too. This is just a planning page, so I'm just getting my thoughts down on paper. So I want to go back now and think about how can I give more details, or if you know this wonderful word, elaborate. How can I elaborate and tell more about each of these things? And so I started thinking about, I get lost in the story. Well, I'm going to make some notes now if I can up here, because when I get lost in a story, I just forget about everything else that's going on. And maybe there are some things that are bothering me, but I can forget about it when I'm reading a story. So I'm going to make a little bullet here and say, I forget about everything else. It's just kind of a little escape for me, I guess, when I'm reading a story. I can get lost in there. I was thinking about when I was a little girl and I loved reading Little House books, and so I could add a detail here about reading Little House books and just becoming so involved in the story that I didn't hear anybody around me. I didn't see what was going on around me. I could just get lost. And as part of that, I just plain enjoy a good story. I don't need flash. I don't need a whole lot of I don't know, crazy stuff going on in there. I just enjoy a good story. So these are some things I could add to my explanation about getting lost in the story. Another thing I was talking about up here is I can feel what the characters are feeling. Now, I'll just be honest with you. For me, the mark of a good story is if it can make me cry. And so that would be something that I could add as a detail here. It's a little breezy out here, I guess you can tell. My paper's blowing up. The mark of a good story for me is if it makes me cry. I really love to cry over a story. And so I was thinking about when I was reading Little Women, and maybe you haven't read it. I'm not going to ruin it for you, but there is a tragedy. And I just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed because it touched my heart so much. Now there were also celebrations in Little Women, and I could celebrate with them too. And even I thought back to Little House on the Prairie again. I would get mad at you remember Nellie? I would get mad at Nellie in Little House. Sorry, this is getting a little messy, but my wall isn't flat here. I would get mad at Nellie in Little House. I'll put LH there so we remember that. So I'm just adding some possible details that I can put when I take all of this writing and put it into paragraph form. You notice I'm not using complete sentences all the time. This is just for planning. I have a few more details that I can add here, but I think I'll wait and do that. And next week we'll take this whole thing and put it into a paragraph. When you use the RAPS method, restate, answer, explain, and then check, you get it really well organized. You answer all the pieces, and the Foursquare helps you answer in an organized way too. And once you get your plan on here, it's really pretty magical to pull it from the chart and put it into paragraphs. It makes it very simple. Like I said, I'll add some more details here, but then one more thing I wanted to show you was I wrote a conclusion, because when you're in second grade, third grade, fourth grade, you're definitely expected to add some kind of conclusion to your writing. So I added that over here. My opinion is that fictional stories are better than nonfiction because I can get lost in the story, I can feel what the characters feel, and pretend I'm in the story too. So, did you notice? I just said it again. I said what my reasons were. I had 3 reasons, and that's generally a good rule to use. 3 reasons to support your thinking. And then I just restated it at the end for a conclusion. So, next time I think what we'll do is take this information all off this chart and put it into paragraphs, and you'll see the magic of pulling it from the Foursquare, and then all of a sudden you have a written piece. It's pretty simple once you get all your thinking done here. So I hope you're writing. I hope you're writing every day and keeping track of what's going on with you this week. I want you to think about writing an opinion, something that you feel strongly about, and I'll talk to you later. Bye. Have a great day.